Armando. I wanted to reach out and say thank you once again for trusting me and allowing me to work with Turtle on his fear of folks outside of the car. When we spoke initially a few weeks ago, you expressed some concern about Turtle barking when he noticed people walking outside the car, either when you were at a stop or perhaps if you were driving and someone was walking by with a dog. We have been working for the past few weeks to sort of relieve some of his anxieties and perhaps fear of seeing people outside of the car by using a process of desensitization and counter conditioning. So in a nutshell, behavior works to serve a function, and so when Turtle is barking at the sight of people outside of the car, fear is acting as a setting event. So this is essentially him attempting to create distance. So what we need to do essentially is to make a more positive association with the sight of people outside of the car, and by doing so we will pair the sight of people with treats. So in addition to that, we'll be desensitizing him to the sight of people outside of the car as well as people exiting the car. You also mentioned that he tends to bark at people when passengers are leaving the car. So we're going to touch on that as well. So the desensitization process is done simultaneously with the counter conditioning process. Desensitization basically means we're going to expose Turtle to these triggers in the environment that cause him to bark. So we don't, of course, want to do this in a way that's going to provoke fear. So we set him up to succeed by having the triggers at a distance, first of all, so he can notice them without feeling the need to react to them immediately. We went to a few parking lots, we sat outside of the car so he didn't feel contained in any way. As people walked by at a distance, he noticed them and I fed treats. The order here is also an important thing to keep in mind because we want to have Turtle notice the folks while he's still what we call under threshold. So he's able to see that they're there, but they haven't quite created a fear response in him yet. So he's able to still kind of process the pairing of the treats with the sight of the people, and therefore learn that when he sees people going forward outside of the car, he will get a treat. And then the process continues by slowly decreasing the distance as the process moves forward until people are kind of close enough so that he's still looking back at you and you can give him a treat, still making that pairing. And then, so in the process, this is also counter conditioning. So initially he was fearful perhaps of these people and therefore barked, but now the counter conditioning is the part where he sort of is changing his opinion as far as seeing people outside of the car. Maybe they're not provoking as much fear because you've taught him that it's perfectly safe, nothing's gonna happen. So moving forward, we added a few more kind of levels to the desensitization process. We started moving inside the car, but leaving the windows open. So he still felt like there was, a little bit of space for him to kind of move and escape if necessary. Of course, as soon as we saw him getting to the point of perhaps reaching what we called the fear threshold, which is, often you can see this in body language. It's just like maybe shivering, his tail could go between his legs, perhaps he starts staring hard at the trigger, kind of tightening of muscles, things like this that I'm sure you've witnessed before and is probably one of the reasons you contacted me in the first place. As soon as you see that kind of body language, just kind of call it a day, you know, like retreat a little bit. We don't want to push him over threshold. He can't really learn when he's in that state of mind. And so it's better just to kind of remove him from the situation and we can start over. And it's also a learning lesson, you know, a lesson for us, because at this point we know, you know, where our boundary is. We don't want to push him over that boundary. So we're working below that boundary when we're doing this process. As far as folks exiting the car, a completely different desensitization process. So we started with just a few things that might kind of tip him off into thinking that someone's getting ready to exit the car. So for example, what's the first thing you do when you're getting ready to leave the passenger seat? You reach over and you undo your seatbelt, and then you put your hand on the handle of the door, you open the door, etc. So we started out simply by having someone reach for the seatbelt. As soon as we did that, Turtle got a treat. As soon as he noticed that happening, when he was kind of getting a little excited and looking back, we called this a CER, conditioned emotional response. So as soon as we were reaching for the seatbelt and Turtle kind of looked excitedly at me for a treat, that's when we knew we could move on to the next level. So the next step being taking the seatbelt off, again, waiting for that positive association, giving him treats until the point where the passenger was actually exiting the car completely. Like I said, you know, moving slowly along this path until the passenger was able to close the car door, walk away, while Turtle is still engaged with me or the driver of the car, you know, kind of not distracting him with treats, giving him treats as a pairing of the trigger being the person exiting the car. Once we reach this point in our training process with both noticing people outside of the car and looking expectantly towards me or the driver, which will be you, for a treat, that's when we start moving into what is called the operant phase of the training process. So at this point, because all along you know, the use of treats has not been used in that traditional sense of a reinforcement, as you've probably heard before, or a reward, simply used to pair the sight of the trigger with the treat. So now that this has happened and he's established what is called, like I said, conditioned emotional response, now when he's looking back in that expected manner, kind of waiting for the treat, he knows that looking at you is what is the behavior that you're looking for. That's when it becomes operant. So operant means that it's more of now we are rewarding that behavior. So that look back in anticipation is the behavior that we want to reward. And so this is the process where we need to maintain the behavior and training. So today what I'm going to show you in the car is how we're going to do that. We're going to have treats readily available, maybe have a little container that can fit into your cup holder in the car, something that you can close in case you know, if you're exiting the car yourself, you don't want Turtle going in there and ravaging the treat jar. So something that you can close securely, but have it accessible to you in the future. So say if he's riding on the passenger lap of someone in your car, you notice someone outside, Turtle notices someone outside, this is when, you know, as soon as he looks back at you, you're going to give him a treat. So this is sort of what we're gonna go over today. I just wanted to kind of get it laid out for you and share this video so that you can kind of go back and review what we've talked about. I think Turtle's gonna do great. He's such a quick learner. He's obviously very motivated by treats, so that is an advantage, absolutely, for you. And you know, I'm also, I am gonna suggest that it probably would be to your benefit, as we initially spoke about, to work on the crate training. I know you mentioned that he has always been a little bit, fearful of the crate, and when he was younger, he was sort of put in a position where he was forced to be in a crate for more hours than he would have liked, and so he's kind of developed this negative association with a crate, in which case we can work on that as well, because as far as riding in a car, it's always safer if possible to have your dog in a crate, as I'm sure you know and you've expressed yourself. So that's something we can touch on, and it's going to be a similar process as far as the counter conditioning and the desensitization, so you've already sort of got the baseline for how that might work, and we can go into greater detail about that as well. Thank you again so much for your patience, and Turtle is a lovely little guy, and I'm sure he's going to do fantastic, and I hope that this is going to help you in the future. And of course, always feel free to reach out to me for any questions, or if we need to make any modifications in the training plan, that's an option as well. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Good job. Good job. Okay, so we're here with Armando, Turtle's co-owner, and I'm just gonna go over what we've been working on as far as the exiting of the car. So as we all know, Turtle tends to bark when passengers are leaving the car. He does it to you, he does it to me, he does it to anyone that's getting out of the car. So we went through the desensitization and counter conditioning process, which I went over in the email as well, which is basically pairing the trigger of a passenger exiting with getting treats. So the desensitization process is basically kind of slowing it down and going step by step, taking baby steps, all the little things that kind of preempt Turtle to put it together that someone's getting ready to leave, such as taking the seatbelt off, touching the door handle, saying goodbye, all of these things kind of give him, kind of get him prepared for the reaction that he normally has, which in the past was barking at you. So we started just by desensitizing those little processes until the point where I or you or Monique, my coworker that I used to give rides to on the way home from work, would exit the car. Turtle would start to bark, but now the reaction is someone exits the car, Turtle looks expectantly towards whoever the driver is and gives treats. So you'll see on the side of the door I have a jar with treats, little treats. It's got a lid on it so that of course when we leave the dogs in here alone, they won't be able to, get into it, but it's accessible. So for the purposes of training, we're gonna leave it open. You can take, you could just put it back on the side door so that, Turtle can't access it because it's to the left of you. And now I'm gonna put my seatbelt on as if getting ready to leave. We're gonna go through the whole process. Of course, now he notices that treats have made their way into the picture, so he's gonna be a little bit curious. So basically, Turtle would normally be barking at me. I'm just gonna go through the whole process here. As soon as I get out of the car and he looks back to you expectantly, that's the point at which you're gonna give him treats, because this is an operant phase of the training process. So that is what you're actually going to be reinforcing, that look back. So I'm just gonna go ahead, I'll put him here. Get out of the car, which is usually where he starts to panic. Close the car door. All right, voila. So instead of barking at me, he now knows that as soon as he looks back at you, he's gonna get a treat. And that's how it's gonna work. So we're going to continue to sort of monitor his progress, keep an eye on his body language, you know, if it seems like he's starting to go over threshold like we discussed, just kind of remove him from the situation, take a look around, see, you know, the environment and where we may have put him in a position where he feels unsafe, and try and avoid that in the future. Of course, it's, you know, behavior is fluid, so we're gonna have to kind of understand that there may or may not be a few setbacks. We're gonna kind of adjust the training plan as often as necessary, but I think as long as we continue down this path, we're gonna be seeing only progress from Turtle. So there you go. Any questions?
No.
No? Nothing at all?
No, it seems pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Just
all right.
when he looks back, you give him a treat.
Yes.
And that's what I did.
That's essentially, yes. And then also keeping an eye on all of those, you know, signs that maybe he's starting to panic, and you know, get his attention, and then when he looks back at you, you can treat him in the moment. If he does bark and he does seem to overreact to a situation where, if you, for example, were driving and maybe you didn't have an opportunity to fumble around and grab the treats, and he does bark at someone, don't worry about it. I mean, you know, it's management is important as well, but like I said, you know, we're living in the real world, and there's going to be situations where this might happen. We're going to do everything we can in our power to avoid them, but of course, don't be disappointed if it does. And that's kind of, that's the majority of it.
Completely understandable.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. Good job, Turtle. Good boy.